Hey everyone, welcome to the Trekyards Mission Briefing, your weekly dose of Star Trek ship goodness, where we take a look at one of the many ship station shuttles, or thingy-mabobbies, from the great wide open universe of Star Trek. Hi Stuart, how you doing?
Good, how you doing, man?
Good, this is going to be a fun one today, but Stuart, what are we looking at?
We're looking at a very, very popular ship, one of the most popular Enterprise designs, I think,
It's Enterprise.
based on fan reaction, and that would be the Enterprise E, or Sovereign.
That would be the Enterprise E. It rhymed.
Ha!
Eagle Moss for the win. Now that is an amazing model there. Which one is that, Stuart?
This is the Polar Lights, or AMT Cadet Series. It's 2500 scale. Did it myself. It's so beautiful.
I do want a bigger Enterprise E. This one's lovely, but I want one of those. Anyway, so the Enterprise E. This episode was actually sponsored by Matt Mulvener, who helped contribute towards getting this amazing special done. So hope you enjoyed this, and hope the rest of you enjoyed this look at an Enterprise. So this first picture, now there's a little funny story behind this particular CG model, and I'll go into it now. So, first contact.
That is a funny story. Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Wow, I mean, we are the funniest people in the world. No, first contact, the Enterprise E was shown to the world, and ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, they head up the CG. Now, for the most part, they're using physical models at that point still. There is some pictures of the amazing physical miniature, the last Enterprise miniature, later on in these pictures. But there was a CG version made for a couple of shots. Now, this is not that version. This is the version that was then made by Foundation Imaging. Now, at the same time, there was two companies working on the VFX of Star Trek on DS9 and Voyager, and it was wondered, would we need an Enterprise E at some point? ILM was not giving their model over. Later on, they did give like the Akira and the Steamrunner, but the E wasn't something that they were giving over, at least at that time. So one of the team at Foundation, he went home over the weekend and he made this. What
Wow.
a talented person, seriously. And this is, this is an incredibly nice model. It for what it is, very, very nicely detailed, very accurate, amazing light rig. And this is what was then used for all the publications, because there was no First Contact E available. All the books, all the video games even, they use this model as part of their CG rendering. So it's not canonical in the sense that it's in the movies, but it's been used to represent it a lot of times. So it is, and it's built by some of the team that were in Star Trek. So it's accurate mostly, if that makes sense.
Wow, that is an interesting story.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah,
Yeah,
so
it makes sense.
yes. But still, an amazing model, and I love rendering it, because this scene looks amazing. So Stuart, take us back to First Contact, or even before First Contact. When was the first time you remember seeing the E, and what was your first impression?
All right, so the first time I saw it was actually in the theater, which was cool. To see it on the big screen, and the first shot of it in the nebula. I mean, we had been wondering what it was going to look like, because Enterprise D had just got destroyed in the last movie, and then Trials and Tribulations came out, and they mentioned that there was another Enterprise. They corrected. How did it go? It was there's been 5, 6, so we knew there was another one coming, but we didn't know what it looked like at all. So to see it on the big screen was really fantastic. And then right after that, one of the first things you see is it flying into battle and like just dwarfing the Defiant. I mean, it was a real impact moment when you first saw this ship. So yeah, I absolutely adore this thing to pieces.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I didn't see First Contact in the cinema. I was too young. I saw Insurrection and Nemesis in the cinema, but I've always been impressed by this ship. It feels, this ship has the advantage of being both a miniature, which means it was fleshed out in hyper good detail, and then 3D models are built based off that hyper detailed physical model.
Now,
So-
I got to jump in. You say miniature, but it's not a miniature. It's a miniature.
It's called a film miniature, but you're right. It was like 10 foot. It was a big one. Yeah, you're right. We'll see pictures of that later on. I never think of them as miniatures, but that's what they call them. So, and so this one had the advantage of being both. Plus, Industrial Light and Magic. I mean, the best visual effects house in the world, making the CG. So it's always looked the best out of all of them. And a movie budget. So it's always impressed me from that. I think the design is excellent. It's interesting how you take the Starfleet aesthetic, especially then when there were so few designs, and to push them forward, and for it to be so just perfect and feel so right, and yet be quite different. And obviously, I've always had it in my brain, as it were, but it's such a good design, and I look forward to going through it. And we'll also compare two of the versions I've got of this model. But this is the first one. But let's go to the next picture.
One thing that always bothered me is the deflector.
Ooh, okay.
Usually it's yellow. It seems like a more yellow color. In this still, it looks very copperish, which is funny because when I painted mine, I ironically did it copper, and I think it matches that picture pretty much exactly, which is cool. Because I never liked the yellow. I think the blue for the deflector is, the way to go. Even if it had like the center part be kind of a yellow color, but the outer part be blue, or vice versa. I didn't like the. I think they're trying to go back to almost like a TOS look with that color, maybe.
I recall John saying he was surprised they went yellow. I don't think that was in his sketches as clarifying what it was. But it's interesting. It gives it a different look. It makes the hull feel slightly warmer. If everything was blue, well, I guess the facades aren't blue. But I don't know. I kind of like that it pops out as a very it's such a different color to the lights and to the whole color. It kind of pops and it feels energized. So, but I get what you mean. It's the future Stuart. So yellow / orange. /copper.
Sure.
Yes.
So do you think those windows at the front there are like a 10 forward kind of thing up in here?
Yeah, that would be my guess. But let's go to the next picture. Now this is a comparison that people always make, and this is a great shot because you've got the first contact, and it's scaled properly. Then you've got the hyper detailed Enterprise D from the end of Enterprise. This is the really, really nice one, which is actually a pleasure to render. These are the scalings. Now, is that what you thought when you saw the movie and saw everything, or were you surprised, or what's your take on this, on the jump between the E and the D?
That's about what I thought. I didn't think it was that much bigger than the Enterprise D, and it's really not for internal volume. It's got less crew. It's got smaller corridors. It's much more of a military vehicle. So yeah, that's exactly what I kind of envisioned when I first saw it on screen. I thought it's probably a little bit bigger than the like lengthwise for the Enterprise D, but not a lot. So yeah, that's exactly what I pictured. Any bigger, and I think it would have been off.
Yeah, if anything, it's more radically reproportioned. Because you look at the style. I mean, I always called the Enterprise E the successor to the Enterprise B. Stylistically and how it's all proportioned, it's very, very similar. And guess what? John designed the B, and he loves the Excelsior, so there is definitely some link there. But in terms of, this gives you a great indication of different profiles. The D is exploration, a lot of physical space. It's there just to go on a long mission. The E, is so much more refined, so much smaller, really. When you look at it, and as you said, volume, because it's a mission-specific craft. You haven't got that excess space. But what's interesting is that you've got the hugely shrunk secondary hull, and yet it's a faster ship, which shows technology's evolving a bit because you can get more into a smaller package. And again, the warp engines, or the warp nacelles, I should say, a lot thinner, but a lot longer. Which, what do you think that speaks to? Because it's not just shrinking for technology. That's maybe saying a different style. What do you think?
That's a very good question, because you would assume that the warp coils on the Enterprise D would be a little bit bigger based on the nacelle configuration. But maybe, like you said, as we've said before, when technology advances, it gets smaller. So you shrink those warp coils in the D are actually way bigger than any other previous Enterprise. Maybe not so much the C, maybe just a little bit bigger than the C's, but so develop some new ones that are bigger to get more speed, whatever. And then as that technology advances, you shrink it. You might have to put in a few more coils, maybe. That's why they're longer. I don't know. But I think it speaks to advancement for sure. And I do really like the new nacelles. There's something really sexy about them.
They are pretty fantastic. Now, if we go to the next picture. But Stuart, look at this side view and tell me how much smaller you think the D and the E. It's at least 2/3 if not half the size. I mean, what does that say in terms of function and what you're losing, and just it's pretty radically different, really.
Well, we know when we did our Galaxy class episodes, a lot of the hull space in the Enterprise D was actually unused, or could be reconfigured or whatever to certain mission profiles. So I think it's just a slimming out of that. You know, they got rid of the whale tanks. You know, I don't need that. You don't need that anymore. But the thing that it has no neck, so it's basically, there is a lot of volume in that secondary hull when you compare it to like the room that's supposed to be taken up by, like, in the neck of the Enterprise D. But I think just getting rid of a lot of the unnecessary, the huge holodecks, all the crew quarters for families, the whale tanks, some labs perhaps. I mean, it's not meant to be a luxury liner anymore. It is a battleship, so just the crews are on board. Their families aren't there. Of course, you still have holodecks, but they're smaller ones now. Of course, they're more advanced, so a lot less room needs to be taken up.
When you take out the non-essential systems, you get that much space reduction.
Yeah,
but it's just interesting. Just how much thinner it is. But let's go on to the next picture, Stuart. And again, this is the front view as we had previously. But now we're going to look onto the actual canonical Enterprise Z model, which we have here at Trekyards. If you go to the next photo, that is the actual Enterprise.
Okay, just going back and forth. There's quite a few little refinements, eh? The lighting's totally different. It's got a much darker hull hull texture, and there are subtle little differences when you flip back and forth. Some, especially to the nacelles. There's just some.
For the fans out there, we'll go first contact, Nemesis. First contact, Nemesis.
Yeah.
First contact, Nemesis. As we did for an upcoming episode. Yeah. The biggest difference. Now, this is one I've been using for a while. So this one was actually built by ILM for Nemesis, and it's an absolutely amazing 3D model, as you can imagine, built by those legends at the end of the Trek career. But yeah, the hull is so much darker, to the point where, as you said, you go back to the first contact, it's a nice light hull color. So you throw a bit of light on it, it all illuminates. Go back to Nemesis, you have to throw a lot of harsh light on one side just to get that effect, but the rest of it's still dark. So it's such a tricky ship to light. And if you actually watch Nemesis carefully, they light it incredibly dark, as in it is very dark. They light it incredibly strong in certain areas, but then because of the green of the nebula and such hitting it, that's what's lighting it a lot of the time. Whereas if you take it out of that scenario and put it in a generic scene, it's so difficult to light. I much prefer the first contact one. But we're focusing on the canonical details here, so that's why we've gone to the E, because that is what was seen in the movies.
Yeah. There's also a lot of a lot more windows in the Nemesis version. They've really beefed up the window content or volume there. It's like it's almost like the ship got a total refit or overhaul between the movies. And we know that, as I said earlier, there are some changes with engine placement, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be interesting to explore that in one episode.
One other little funny thing is that if you go to the first contact version, some of the windows are not on, and that's quite a fun thing that the modelers tend to do with all the ships, because you wouldn't have every single room being lit. You go to the Nemesis version, and again, the version I got for this ship was actually the dry dock-ish version, so nothing was lit. The facades weren't on, the grills, the lights. So I had to go into the individual object files and turn everything back on, which means I got every single frame of the Nemesis E to try and break down its light rig and things, and every single window on the ship is on for the entire movie, except when it hits the scimitar, then the ones at the front break. But they're all on, so I had all mine on. Which
I gotta go back and watch that. I never noticed those little things.
Yeah, it makes it pop more, but it does seem a little bit less realistic. The other one has more subtlety. But the next picture is one last one on the first contact E. I just want to show the back of the ship, just sort of the general view before we get into the details. Just to show, the big impulse drives, the shuttle bay right there at the neck, how the engines come back, the RCS thrusters. It's a very elegant ship, I think. And yet lots of dimensions, lots of plating that gives it depth.
Yeah. As I always say, that in my opinion, the TOS Enterprise looks good from practically every angle. This one has a few angles where it looks kind of odd and gangly, almost too long. There's just some where it's approaching, it just looks funny, but there's some that are just super stunning on this one. I'm not a huge fan of the view of it from the side, but this image that we're looking at here, because everything is so elongated, it really makes it look like it's going fast, sitting still. And that's one of the things John was going for. He just stretched everything out. All right, so let's go to the next picture. Ooh, I like this picture. This is a size comparison chart.
And this is our scale 1 from our mission briefing episode on the Trekyards Live convention episode on the history of the Enterprises. So I thought I'd throw this in just to give you a context of the evolution.
Very cool. Yeah, I love the subtle stepping of scale, and then all of a sudden you get to like the Enterprise F and it goes whoop, and then it goes whoop again with the J. Just they lost that subtle curve.
Wow, there's a couple in between.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, so the Cadet series here, that's to scale of each other. So
it really is. Yes. What you can again see with this is it really is the Excelsior, going back to that style. I mean,
absolutely.
Clearly. And I think that's absolutely fine. It's a different era. They have this big expansion for the C and then the D, but now they're going back to a wartime, but push the tech. And just like the refit, the Excelsior was the next big evolution, but pushing the tech. It wasn't a revolutionary change as the C was. Same with the E.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because yes, it does look a lot like the Enterprise B there, and that's because they were both done by John Eves. I hate the Excelsior. Don't mind the Enterprise B, but that aesthetic changes really nicely to that. But it should be noted too that the Enterprise C goes back to a TOS style, which kind of got away from with the Enterprise B. So it's like they do go back and revisit their older designs, and that the Enterprise J did the same thing. It's very similar to the NX-01.
And also the D in proportions.
Yes. Yeah. So it's interesting the way that they fall back on past designs. Let's go into the next one. This is a close-up of the bridge detailing.
Yeah, so now we're back into the canonical Nemesis model. I'm just going to break down a few of its detail elements for Matt that wanted to see some of the best bits. So this is it's quite a complicated bridge area.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say it's very busy. There's lots going on here.
The one thing that he always strikes out to me is the different level of plating and the fact that there's different colours. This version is even darker, but they've still got those black other parts either side, and also with all black and grey Aztec. I mean, it's so dark, but there's so much different colour. Dark colour, but sure. What do you think the extra black plating is? Do you think it's armour? Do you think it's displacement, chromo, drive plates?
It could be armour, it could be enhanced deflector shields, or enhanced shields generators, perhaps, for around the bridge area, because that's the most vulnerable spot, as everyone says. Maybe that was addressed with that. But to be honest, just the contrasting of the color, like the darker color, and the way they've got it laid out, it really makes the ship pop, and it's just a nice added bit of visual eye candy, I guess, when you see the ship. It's not all the same hull color like all the other Enterprises really were. So I think it makes it look more aggressive, makes it look more, I don't know, purpose-built, I guess. I'm sure it's it has some function, and I would think it'd probably be shielding or armor, like you said, because those are vital areas there. And everybody always says, with the bridge on top, it's the first target, and I'm sure people got sick of hearing that, because I know I have. So let's throw on extra shield generators around the bridge, maybe. I don't know.
Let's go to the next picture for a second, because I have a good point about this. One thing I really like is how many escape pods there are. I mean, you really feel as if this thing is more functional. You can run to an escape pod. But it kind of surprises me, and if you go back to the other picture, I just want to flip between. Look how many windows there are around the bridge area, around those few decks. That's a lot of living space, a lot of looking out. It makes the whole area pop, as you said. But unlike the refit, where it's got those different levels, there's nothing apart from the end. You've got, look like you got the bridge, and then deck 2, you've got a whole set of windows at the front, Deck 3, whole set of windows. Deck 4, whole set of windows. That's a lot of... I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even know what would be there. Like, I would think maybe senior staff quarters, but
we know that don't put them next to the bridge. The biggest target of the ship.
Yeah, I mean, I would want my bridge or my quarters pretty close to the bridge if I was the captain. But we know in the Enterprise D, Captain Picard's quarters were way here at the front, right above 10 forward. He had that nice big suite. So that's pretty much way far away from the bridge.
It could be all off meeting rooms and observation and maybe a tactical planning room or something.
Yeah, it does look like there's still a conference lounge right behind the bridge, though.
Which takes
I was going to say it'd be cool to have the conference lounge like down a deck and out front. But it looks like it's still in the same spot.
Yeah, if you go back to the other picture, you can see it right there at the back. And this picture really shows off the high level of detail. I mean, look at all the different panel lines, all neatly in there. You can see it's got, just like the Enterprise Reef, it had those docking ports at the back and to the side, all physical detail. You've got those 2 aft torpedo launchers at the top, because this is the extra armed Nemesis version, so you've got those extra weapon emplacements right there. Again, a lot of windows. You've got the phaser. If you look at the phaser strips on the left, the physical detail in that, plus all those little markings. I mean, this is such a beautiful model. I just wish it was slightly brighter.
Yeah. Well, it's like that black, the black plating they're using there is almost like the new form of Aztecing, to give it that more hyped up for big screen look. I was going to say what an odd placement for torpedo launchers, but then I was thinking about Enterprise, the refit, and there's the 2 shuttle bay, or the 2 docking ports on each side of the neck, and that's where the torpedo room was. So that back section is probably all just torpedo room and I don't know.
Well, one thing that you get a sense of from Nemesis is that this refit has a lot of weapon tubes, but obviously the front primary couple, they're going to have the most torpedo storage. You're not going to give 100 torpedoes for the one, and you'll see later the one below the bridge, the one here. So you might only have 10, 15 torpedoes, because I've got multiple facing aft, multiple facing forward. So this is just like another torpedo launcher, so you've got that firing arc. So I wouldn't necessarily think it takes up that much room, but it's probably something more like that, because it's not the primary delivery platform, is it?
And the next picture, I like this shot. Get see some detailing on the front of those nacelles, which I absolutely love. I think those are some of the best nacelles in Star Trek.
And just beautiful little details that ILM put in.
Yeah, and those huge impulse engines.
They've actually got smaller for this one, I believe, and slightly more plated. But I just like this ship. It's such a nice feel in there. That big shuttle bay with that big sort of top room, just like the TOS Enterprise has and Voyager has. But I want to know. There's loads of panel lines behind the shuttle bay. They've felt to me like it's some sort of signaling for the shuttles that they can land on those as extra pads or something. Because it seems odd to have such important looking stuff next to such important functional area.
Yeah. I'd never even considered that, but that's interesting. Because, the Enterprise, the TOS Enterprise does have the aircraft-like landing lights along the back. So if you're drifting too far to the left or too far to the right, it guides you to the center in case the tractor beam's not working, I guess. I don't know. So it's always been a thing, and it ties back to the naval lineage. So, but yeah, this doesn't have anything like that. So, I don't know. That's a very good question.
Another thing that strikes me about this ship is how many lights are on the top of the hull.
There are 4 lights.
There's more than 4 lights, Stuart.
No, there are 4 lights. I'm not going to say any more.
Or 5 lights. No, there are so many lights on top, and there was a lot near the bridge. But look how many are just on this ceiling. The skylights. There's a lot of them. There really is. Just sort of some randomly places. I know it obviously adds light, but look again near those black areas past the shuttle bay. It's just a single light, a single window, just looking up. I mean, what could the purpose possibly be for that?
That's yeah. And we've heard that argument before on other ships, so it looks cool. That's the answer.
It does look cool. But the next picture is a shot of the underneath. And again, you can see those sort of great details, the extra hull plating, the extra phaser strips on the pylons, the sort of Enterprise B Excelsior almost detail at the bottom, as if there are pod bay doors there. And I would hope there'd be some sort of maybe doors there at some point to go in, and just it's not the most detailed place, but you can certainly see just more stuff.
Well, it's interesting because this is the Nemesis model, right?
Yep.
And I'm looking at this one, which is based on the First Contact model. While we're looking at this whole thing, and there's so many subtle differences. That has phaser strips on the struts. This doesn't. This doesn't have the docking ports at the or the torpedo thing on there. I never realized how many differences there actually were. So, but yeah,
this one was quite a change. The Insurrection version was very similar to the First Contact, but slightly different hull materials, and the design was tweaked slightly. This one was the let's make it look different for some reason. One thing you can also see on this version, I don't think we cover it specifically later on, but you can see the bottom of the cells, how lack of detail. Obviously, there's quite a lot of hull plating, but it's so flat, and it's not a good part of the ship to see. To render.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah.
I really like this shot in particular because, like you said, it does show off that tie into the Excelsior with that, even the shape and everything on the bottom of that secondary hull, which I had really never noticed before. I gotta be honest. Next picture is the front deflector, and I'm not a huge fan.
And disclaimer, I lit this a little bit too bright, sorry about the detail there, but it's a quite heavily detailed deflector. I think it works. It's different.
Yeah. You needed a part that they could detach, for the Borg. So got that center part.
Yeah.
But
so one thing that's interesting about this shot is that because of how I've lit it to show the detail, you can actually see how lack of detail there is above the deflector. I mean, these models are built to purpose, so certain places you're going to see more, like the top, like the bridge, get all the detail, but somewhere you're just not going to focus on, like the deflector, there's literally no detail except texture mapping. And that's it doesn't look great, but it was just to show it off. Does anything strike you about this image?
Well, one thing I noticed is on the side of the secondary hull there, it's like there's indents to give it texturing of some sort. They're not windows. Are they indented or are they sticking out? It just
they're bump maps. They're indents. Well, no, they could be either. I think they're bump maps, which means stick out, but they're meant to look like they're indented.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it could look either way depending on how your brain is thinking at the time, but that's something I would never have considered being there. I always think that the hulls are so smooth on these, except for where the window placement is. That just seems unnecessary.
This one is a slightly odd version of the E. I will absolutely give you that. It's further away from what we know. But there is two things I like about this, though. You can see how much dimensionality there is to that deflector, how many different levels, but it's not over the top. It's just sort of functionally showing there's this armor. But you can also see it's not the best picture for it, I'll admit. But underneath the deflector, you can see those two torpedo launchers. They're sort of in shadow, but that is where the other two, I guess those are the primary photon torpedo launchers, are right there, and they're so integrated. It's kind of silly how nonchalant they are. Are they on your First Contact version too?
Yeah, there's a little recessed area there. You can't really see it, but yeah, there's a notch cut out there where they are.
Yeah, nice. And that is it for this week's Trekyards. Wow.
Trekyards. Wow, is that like a new show?
It could be. If you like that idea, then do click into next week and see if it becomes a show name. It won't. But part 2. Bye guys.